Thank you for joining this Disruptive Innovation Festival interactive session on making the most of startup tools. The Disruptive Innovation Festival is a 3-week-long online open access event that invites thought leaders, entrepreneurs, businesses, designers, makers and learners to explore the question, the economy is changing, what do I need to know, experience and do? My name is Joe Isles, I'm part of the DIF 2015 hosting team, and I'm delighted to host today's session with some expert guests. As many of you will have seen during the DIF, the schedule is packed with new technologies, the latest research and ideas for innovation. Some of you might be thinking how to actually turn these ideas into startups, into business models of your own, or to incorporate them into the current startups that you may have begun already. And that's the purpose of today's session. And we're joined by two great panelists to help us out with this challenge. Colin Kelly's career began in broadcasting and journalism. Over the last 4 years, he's become a social media and media relations trainer, helping businesses and organizations from small startups and multinational corporations with their digital and traditional communication strategies. And Colin McLaughlin started out in IT sales, and since then has held roles in marketing, sales, as a commercial director, and has been involved with some of the cloud computing technologies, which you may have heard about throughout the DIF, another hot topic. And now Colin works in business strategy with sustainable growth being a fundamental driver, and we'll hear some more about what he's doing in that space later on. So we're joined by the two Collins today, Colin Kelly and Colin McLaughlin. Nice to see you guys.
Cheers.
So this session will fundamentally be a discussion. We've got no slides, we're going straight into the conversation, and I'm going to need your help throughout this 45-minute event. Do post your comments, your questions and thoughts or suggestions below the video player on the Disruptive Innovation Festival event page. Also, if you're a Google Plus user, you can click Be Part of the Conversation. It's a small tab that pops up within the video player, and then you can use your Google Plus account to use the Q&A app as another means of asking questions. I'm joined by Sarah today, who will be fielding those and sending them to me so I can put them to whichever Colin you prefer. So to get us started, guys, first question. We hear about startups all the time. Every day there's the latest new technology, the latest inventive new business idea. Kickstarters jam-packed with thousands of ideas for new gadgets, gizmos, services. It's a very crowded environment. What's in it for people, or why would people start a business in what might be said to be a saturated environment? Colin McLaughlin.
Part of that question, I think, comes down to, is it ever a good time to start a business? If it's in your genes and that's what you're aiming to do, then, although there is a saturated market, there's always opportunity. And I think, as you opened up there, Joe, the economy is changing, and today there's probably as much, if not more, opportunity than there's ever been, because people are struggling or trying hard to find new opportunities to get into, as what we call the circular economy. And I think if you look around today, there's many organizations, there's many products, there's many businesses out there who are operating, and have a look at these businesses, because out the back of them, they'll be doing something which is linear. And where somebody is doing something linear, it means there is an opportunity to do something circular. Now, if I could just start just by giving one idea of that. Many, many moons ago, you had Kodak, who made cameras. And all of a sudden, Kodak started to look at what's this digital camera market and how are people going to capture photographs and all the rest of it. And they didn't move. They said people will never take photographs like that. They'll always use film. Lo and behold, years later, they lost their position as the #1 in the marketplace to people who made digital cameras. So I think if you look at what people are doing linear today, you will find opportunities to do circular. So that for me says it's a great time to have a look. If you've got an idea that's in your mind just now about what you can get that brings recurring revenues and involves in a circular economy, then why not do it today? Why wait 10 years? You might have missed your opportunity.
Thanks. And Colin Kelly, on this question of saturation and competition and such a crowded marketplace where people are really scrabbling around for for innovation at times. That's how it can seem. You work with startups and larger businesses. What's your take on this? What direction should people be heading in?
Yeah, well, I think you start up, you do it because you have a burning passion to do it, because you want to do it. You want to innovate, you want to make things better. And, we hear a lot about that kind of 1 or 2% improvement. And it's a tiny change, but it can have a big impact. And I think it's a natural sort of human thing that we're drawn towards innovation. That there's so much coverage about new technologies, new ideas, simple differences, simple changes that make business better for everyone. This thing is something that we all want, and as Colin was saying, there's never been a better time to do it, because there's tools available and there's a real thirst among society for this kind of thinking.
Okay, so if we and I'll probably come back to you first off, Colin, Kelly, we live in a kind of uncertain time. We see this disruption. I mean, Colin, you gave the example of Kodak, and but there's disruption in supply chains by geopolitical events. Or it's an uncertain time. How can individuals or businesses actually stand out from the crowd in this in this crowded space?
Well, I think it's really important to be authentic, and I think to have some sort of vision, and I think you need to stick true to that. And the other one I would put in would be values. And I think now more than ever before, we're drawn to people with the same vision and values as ourselves. It's very difficult now for big corporations to really hold true to that, because they're all about the shareholders, they're all about the profits. And so a nimble new startup can you can go to, for example, like a cloud accountancy model, or getting into social media. Whereas I work with big businesses all the time, and even something, I mean, there's this one client of mine, they've spent 18 months at deliberating about how to start a blog. Whereas if they were a startup, they'd had a blog probably before the business was even trading. So the small businesses, the new starts, that stuff's just intuitive to them. And I would urge them just to get on and do it and learn from the mistakes. And you can see with that kind of mindset, they will take market share away from the bigger incumbents.
And Colin McLaughlin, you've seen both sides of the coin. You've worked for larger businesses and smaller. How can companies stand out from the crowd? You mentioned about the looking from the linear business model, and thinking about the circular one. Is that the key, or is there more to it than that?
I think it's there's more to it.
Colin, we've actually lost your audio there for a second. I think it might be your connection. We'll just shut off your camera for a moment, and we'll work to get your feed up and running again. In the meantime, Colin, Kelly, your main area of expertise, I think, from your bio there, is around social media. So creating impact with social media. Again, this is another area where even established brands are struggling to kind of cut through the noise. How do you do it?
Well, you need to be true to yourself. I think you do it because you want to do it. So I'm often meeting business owners who say, I want to be on Twitter, I want to be on Facebook, and I'll say, why? And it's very clear that they're doing it because, well, they think they have to be because everybody else is. I think it's no coincidence that the people who get the best results from social media identify themselves as people that want to do it. So the people who do best on YouTube, they call themselves YouTubers. They live and breathe it. They're not just concerned with their own stuff, but they enjoy consuming the content as well. It's the same with Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. Now, if you don't have that mindset personally, then perhaps reach out and find someone and make them part of your team who does, and work with them. So you don't need to want to do Facebook and Twitter, but maybe find someone who does and then work with them so they understand the business objectives. It's very easy to jump on and start tweeting and Facebooking. They're easy to get noticed these days, but are you being noticed for the right things, and is there a business objective behind it? So the two need to work hand in hand.
This all takes time, though, doesn't it? There are many businesses out there thinking, let's stick to the bread and butter. Maybe they sell stuff. Maybe they're a retailer. This could be a distraction. You might make a few vines. You might be posting some images to the Instagram account, but does this actually have an impact on the performance of a business?
Yeah, I think it does. But well, first of all, it's about letting the audience understand your reason for being here, who you really are, your personality, what you're all about. It's recognizing that we live in a social world now. You're talking about disrupting. So we're disrupting this idea that the big brand has a corporate message that we push out, and we're allowing the audience to come back to us. And so that there's a dialogue going on. We're allowing the users to actually shape the products and services. And you can see there with that kind of thinking going on, how innovation can follow because we've got this understanding and this connection with other people. And there are countless examples. You look at a company like Blend Tech that make blenders. They had a 500% increase in sales just by doing funny YouTube videos. Now, you're right in that it takes time. It doesn't always work. And I think what I would add is crucially, you need to be a good business underneath it. So yeah, we could get loads of eyeballs, we could get loads of clicks, but if the blenders aren't any good, then all you're going to have is loads of unhappy customers now with a return path to rant at you. So it's really important that we have good, credible businesses underneath.
And we do have Colin McLaughlin back. Let's see if we can hear from you, Colin.
Can you hear me there?
We can. We might need to keep an eye on whether to keep your camera live, but let's give it a go. We're just talking about social media there with Colin Kelly. You've been part of a number of businesses. Has there been a changing role of social media in terms of the overall function and performance of the business?
Oh, I think most definitely. I mean, the ability to communicate through social media is just like a whirlwind. Years ago, it was all about chopping doors, and that's all about activity-led as far as a business is concerned, other than its marketing. You sent your people out there to chop doors and talk to people. Then you started to do telesales. You spoke to more people in a day. And God, with Facebook and with all these other social media type activities, your ability to communicate with your audience is just huge. It's vast. So I think undoubtedly what it is doing is it creates you more opportunity just basically through more activity. So it's been a huge game changer for businesses.
Is it about the business changing, or how much of it is about the customer changing, about different expectations from businesses?
I think it's probably about both. I guess there's an element today that we're seeing where you could say that we're possibly verging on over-communication. So, businesses are changing again because they only want to read what's appropriate to them. Whereas before they were quite happy to talk to people. Now, as I say, that over-communication means that they can be picky and choosy. But some people choose not to engage with it. So I guess it is about both parties, both the customer and the seller, actually engaging with the opportunity. With social media.
Just a reminder, if you're watching this on the Diff website, then head below to check out the discussion, add your own questions in there, and we can put them to both or one or other of the Collins as this session on Startup Tools progresses. Or if you're a Google Plus user, do click the Be Part of the Conversation link within the video player to use the Q&A app to ask questions. So I want to talk about a little bit about collaboration. I mean, Colin Kelly, I'll come to you first on this one. You mentioned about YouTubers. They're an example of a highly collaborative bunch of people. The big names collaborating all the time. But how important is collaboration in today's business? We were talking earlier on a bit about how competition there's massive competition. There's people protecting their most innovative ideas. There's a lot of kind of accusations of people ripping off other ideas, especially in this sort of electronics market over the past few years, with some stories I'm sure you know about. Is it possible for small and big businesses to be collaborative in today's environment?
Yeah, I think so. I had a great quote once, and it said that small businesses exist because big business allows them to, and I think that's true. And I think the smart big businesses are recognizing. I mentioned the slow pace of change. For them, someone likened it to trying to turn an oil tanker, 180 degrees without stopping it. It has to keep going. And so I think more than ever, big businesses are reaching out to the innovators, to the small businesses. I think because of these social media tools, the small businesses are perhaps becoming more ambitious. They're recognizing that these big decision makers are just a couple of clicks away. Why can't I connect with the top person at Skyscanner or the head buyer at Tesco through LinkedIn. You can, it's just a couple of clicks. And it comes down to the credibility and the substance. We've also seen, because of the economy changing since the crash of 2008, very experienced, very credible, very senior business people coming out of, for example, the banking sector or the retail sector, maybe in their 40s or 50s or 60s, and thinking, well, I've still got something to contribute here. I'm going to get into the startup space.
And Colin McLaughlin, we'll come on to it in a couple of moments, but your current business has quite a novel approach, shifting from selling a product to selling a service. How has collaboration been important in the development of that, or is it something you've wanted to protect because it is quite a unique idea?
No, I think if we tried to do it on our own, we just wouldn't have. We didn't have all the resources to be able to put that model onto the marketplace. So collaboration has enabled us to do it. And it's not just with one other support arm, it's with two support arms. So we have, if I can touch briefly on the model, it is about leasing services. And, that takes finance. So, unless you've got deep pockets, you need a financier to help you. And you need a product. And we're not a manufacturer, so we needed to get a manufacturer to support us. So we have three people in the collaboration, along with the customer. And then, so I think, it's a great model of, as I said, companies working together to take a solution to marketplace. Everybody needs something. And if we look at some of even the modern services of today, being Airbnb and Uber, and we look at how they're collaborating with each other, all they are is platforms. They're bringing together a customer and a provider, and I think that collaboration plays a huge part in the future.
Colin, Kelly, how we've picked up there on Airbnb and Uber, some of these business models that, putting aside the controversy around the way that they operate and the relationship with workers, how important have startup tools, the ones we've been talking about so far, things like social media, how important have you seen these be in the development of some of these big name models that are really dominating their respective industries at the moment?
Yeah, well, neither of those businesses have embarked on mainstream traditional heavyweight advertising campaigns like they might have done previously. It's largely been spread through word of mouth and good content. Just to pick up on Colin's point, I think they're a little bit more than platforms. I actually think they probably see themselves as communities, and so it's very important to them that they're able to have discussions with their users, with other stakeholders, and indeed with other businesses. And so I think when the issue of trust is really important. So you get a new player like Airbnb, the users or potential users are going to think, is there credibility here? Is there trust? One of the ways that they measure that is they'll look at the social media streams. What does this organization say? How do they say it? How do they handle it when things go wrong? What do other people say about them? And because they embrace social media, I can see at a glance an answer to all these questions. And so I'll make a judgment. And the judgment is basically, are these nice people? Are these people I trust and would want to do business with? And for the ones that do well, the answer is often yes.
Well, that's an interesting point about these organizations not really using mainstream or traditional media tactics. It makes me think, I think recently Airbnb did launch a billboard campaign in San Francisco where they effectively said, you're welcome. We've paid the tax that you wanted so much. You're welcome. I hope you spend it wisely. And actually, that one-way broadcast model backfired massively for them. There was no exchange. There was no conversation. It was effectively some commentators were saying that Airbnb had revealed their hand there. They weren't perhaps the community organization or community interested organization that they had claimed to be, and had revealed a bit of a corporate face behind.
Yeah, well, I mean, as Colin mentioned earlier, I think he used the phrase that they raise expectation, and that becomes difficult. It's very easy for a company to be the good guy when it starts, and then, of course, there's pressure to monetize, and we've seen that with Google, we've seen that with Facebook, and it's the old adage of, can you stay true to these original values while the money men and women are putting the squeeze on you, and that's sometimes where things go wrong a little bit.
Colin, to talk a bit more about Juice, then leasing a service, paying for a service of light rather than paying for light bulbs and light fittings. This is these pay-per-use schemes to put, or perhaps performance economy models are a key part of the shift to a circular economy. How have you found it marketing a business in which the customer doesn't actually own anything?
An interesting question. I'm not sure. Maybe if you ask me that again in about 3 months, I'll tell you a little bit more deeper into it. But I guess it's what it is something fresh, and I guess that engages people. They want to see what's new. They want to see what's different. So I think that's been an interesting model because, as a small businessman, what you don't want to do is to spend all your time talking and not selling anything. So it's great that they want to talk, but at the end of the day, they've also got to buy if you've got to have a sustainable business format. But I think it's engaged people. That's the first thing I'll have to say. I think the second thing is it's true of all businesses. If you can make somebody leaner, meaner, and fitter, then they'll buy from you because it's to their bottom line benefit to do so. And our product gives people something that they otherwise couldn't afford to purchase outright, which is very much of the pay-as-you-go model the world over, whether it be software or whether it be HP for computers that you're buying or something else. If you're leasing something, you get something you couldn't really afford otherwise. And that's very much what it is here. But to that leaner, meaner, and fitter argument, it also brings the greener argument. It also brings a I'm doing my part argument. And I find that that's really interesting because a lot of companies out there just want to talk about it, and they say, yeah, I want to be leaner, meaner, and fitter, but there's a cost to going greener, and that cost is often the barrier. And I think if you can take that away, it's great. Give them a little bit of bottom line, they're back into building the advantages from it. So it's been an interesting few months since we launched it. We've done a lot of engagement. We're now getting the reward from that engagement. So the thing I would probably embrace the most about it is it's new, and everybody likes something new. You need to continue to be innovative. It's like when Uber first started out, as Colin said, they didn't have to go to a big marketing campaign, but we all wanted to tap in to find out what they were doing. We all wanted to find out more. So I think the message here is don't stop innovating. Keep being innovative, and you'll find that people want to talk to you.
Well, I appreciate that, but there is a lot of criticism these days, and I guess we feel that ourselves running the Disruptive Innovation Festival. Innovation itself, even disruptive innovation, are terms that people are starting to get a bit tired of, really. Colin Kelly, how can you find a kind of a fertile or a willing response to these claims of innovation? How would you perhaps best use these different startup tools to promote innovation, because it's what everyone's talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to really put across the benefits of the innovation. I think it has to be better. So it's not just about being leaner, meaner, and greener. It actually has to have that kind of wow factor. Wow, this is great. I used Airbnb. It wasn't just cheap and easy. It was actually better. It was a better experience than I would have had in a big brand hotel. And I've seen Colin's website, and I've seen the products that they create, and then wow, these are great. And so it's like everybody's seen the iPhone now. There's a good innovation from the last few years. That's what you're measured against. Does it actually make a positive difference? Is it something that people are going to want to rush out and have, regardless of whether it saves us money, whether it's circular, whatever it is? It's also got to be better. And social media is a great way of putting that across. And I think anybody that's doing this or wanting to do it, I think you need to have a blog where you can explain step by step, this whole process. If you look at the businesses that use crowdfunding, they're building, as Seth Godin would call it, they're building a tribe. People that share their vision and their values, and that are interested in every single step of the process, and that they've got some involvement in it. But I think the key thing is the end result has got to be better, not just different from what was there before.
I think that's it.
Oh, go on, Colin, go for it.
I was going to say, the interesting about it's better. I mean, if we use Airbnb as a model, the client, I have no proven fact behind us. But the client who I think will use Airbnb is different from the client who will use a Hilton hotel or a five-star hotel somewhere around the globe. So there is a marketplace where you're fitting your product. I don't think necessarily it has to be better in across the globe. It has to be better in that marketplace that you're aiming for. So the Airbnb in many ways is an enabler. It's allowed people to maybe afford to go to somewhere they wouldn't normally be able to afford to go because it's brought down the price of accommodation.
Thanks. We're going to talk about measurement and how to measure success in a moment. But just a quick note, any of you who are watching and have thoughts, ideas, questions for our panel here, don't forget to add them to the thread below or use the Q&A app in Google Plus to put your questions to us. So we've talked about some great examples of business models or campaigns have come up. Colin, Kelly, you mentioned Blend Tech earlier. Obviously, it's a great example. They had a blender, a product that everyone knows about, product type that everyone knows about, that they were claiming was the best. So they did this Will It Blend YouTube campaign, and it's been, I mean, you said a number earlier, 500% uptake?
500% increase in sales in, I think it was 2012 was the year that they predominantly did that style of YouTube video.
So that's a great example. How can we measure these sorts of things? Sales is one, but how else can you measure the impact of a campaign when things like perception of a brand are so important?
Well, I mean, I might be out of step with a lot of the thinking on this, but I think really you need to measure sales, because I think that's what drives the business. You measure sales, you measure profit, and I think it's very dangerous to just measure reach, because I think it's very easy to get a million views. If you want a million eyeballs, you go and get them. Do something crazy now and you'll get them. It won't help the business. And I see a lot of people just measuring reach. I think that's very dangerous. Yeah, I suppose using innovative marketing, but to drive a very traditional result. I mean, wouldn't it be great if we could measure sentiment? And there's all these kinds of tools that start to do it, but I don't think anybody's really cracked it yet. It's very, very difficult. And of course, there's a lot of bigger businesses that, if they're being honest, don't really care about sentiment, because a few people hating them, as we see with the tax situation, it doesn't really matter at this stage. It might in the long run. I hope it does. So no, I think you ultimately you measure what goes in the till at the end of the day.
Colin McLaughlin, is that the way you see things? You've got Juice. You've worked in other businesses. Is sales the key KPI that you should be looking at?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree 100% more. It's the bottom line. It's how much money you make. If you don't make money, you haven't got a business. It's as simple as that. And that business starts with, as we said, about communicating and activity and talking to people and getting the opportunity. But you've got to turn these opportunities into sales, and you've got to make sure that your product or your service that you're selling is profitable. So, as I said, you can go there with sentiment and say, no, this is a great product. As I said, part of the reason for Juice being on the market was we took LED light bulbs. We wanted people to buy LED light bulbs for us. The barrier that we had was, well, that's going to cost me so much money, and I won't get a payback this year, so I have not improved my bottom line. Therefore, why should I do it? I'm a small business. I can't afford to take that type of hit. So what we did was changed it to give them the benefit. So yes, bottom line all the way.
Okay, so that's really interesting. It's not I guess we often hear about businesses and about how purpose is crucial. We had a session with Etsy on Friday, who was saying about regenerative business, how businesses can develop not just financial capital, but social capital or natural capital. There seems to be a trend where other aspects of a business are being taken into account. We're not going to be completely naive and say that that they go above, as you say, what goes in the till at the end of the day. But if sales are our number one horse, the front runner, how far behind are some of these other priorities around wider benefit, jobs, or regenerating and natural systems and environment? How far behind are these other factors?
Well, I think that depends a lot on the individual business and the people behind it. I mean, I'm sure there are lots of businesses that want sales and want profit so that they can give something back. And many of us dream of creating jobs and creating opportunity for people. Or we have a product that we think would help the rest of the world, and we want to get it out there. There's some wonderful social enterprises, but at the end of the day, they still need to. They need to make money to do all these things, and I hope I suppose within a team you've got people that maybe only focus on the community benefits or the social aspects of it, and you have other people that are really looking at that bottom line, and I hope that they can influence each other, and I think smart businesses now are listening. They're not just listening to the accountants, but they're listening to the innovators and the designers and the audience and so on, and so it will vary. There'll be some businesses where all these things are working quite closely together, harmony, that's great, and there'll be others where there's still a big gap. But I agree entirely with what Colin said. At the end of the day, we can't really do any of that if we're not making money and able to sustain ourselves.
Yeah. I think the bigger you get, you certainly you have this social corporate responsibility, so you have to do the good community things. But as a small businessman, you can't afford to do any of that if you haven't got money. And as a startup, your first aim is to make a profit. How can you sustain your business if you've not got funds to take it forward with? And your investors are not going to keep investing with you if you just keep throwing away their cash. So, has to be bottom line.
And maybe it was the wrong question really, because that is I think becoming a bit of an antiquated view that it's a trade-off, that only one of these things can win and the others are just the nice runners-up. Maybe that's the wrong analogy altogether.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was just going to say, you can see it already starting to happen with the backlash against some of these companies that aren't paying maybe the full amount that they might pay in corporation tax, and that's already starting. There's a bit of negativity. It might start affecting some of the money that they're making, and some of the partnerships and permissions that they might get in future. And so, yes, I think these things are becoming increasingly important.
I want to just talk about scale. It's another topic that's come up a lot over the course of the Disruptive Innovation Festival. Businesses and commentators, presenters have taken different approaches to this question around scale. It seems like some of the businesses we've mentioned already, Uber and Airbnb and many others, are pursuing scale, domination, monopolies as a top priority. Is that the be all and end all? Colin McLaughlin, you've started a business, as you said, fairly recently with Juice. How important is scale to you?
It depends on your business model. I mean, I think the more customers you have, the better it will always be, because if a couple go away, you're not going to miss them too much. But on Uber's model, it is very much about getting your brand name. They've got a great product, great service that they can offer globally, because they are, I'll take Colin's word here, they're a community. So they're broadening their community. And I think scale is really important for them. There's other businesses where, yes, again, it's scale, but on a very different level. It might be a local level of how do you get the scale locally, first of all. So again, looking at your marketplace, is your marketplace global? Is it multi-city? Is it local? But everybody has to have some scalability that you're going to increase your services and your model. I think the most important thing about scale, though, is making sure your customers come back again. If you keep your customers, you don't have to keep looking for new ones as much. It's cheaper to keep a customer and sell to them again than it is to acquire a new one. So as long as your model is definitely recurring, then you can get scale pretty fast. If your model's not recurring, you're having to work hard just to replace what you had because you had a one-time sale. And if I go back to right where we very much started about people who have seen their models change, and we said Kodak, digital cameras and film from the old cameras, they lost the recurring revenue of the film. How do you recover that? Cameras last a long time, so people are using digital ones instead of renewable film. I think the other things like Hewlett Packard, if I can go to a model of theirs, Hewlett-Packard had inkjet cartridges and toner cartridges that they sold to people. And then all of a sudden people said, oh, let's have less waste and refill the product and reuse the product. Great idea. But all of a sudden Hewlett-Packard's thinking, what about all my revenue? So scale comes on different levels and in different ways. And I think if you've got recurring revenue, then scale can come pretty quickly. But it is very important to get it in the right level.
We've got about 10 minutes left. I want to make sure we do actually talk about some actual tools and maybe perhaps a bit more of the if perhaps tangible advice for people watching. Colin Kelly, we've spoken about social media, and I want to discuss some tools outside of that in a moment. But we often hear that social media is for perhaps big businesses and small is you've got to be part of the conversation because otherwise it's going to happen without you. That's kind of quite a defensive outlook. How much can social media and social networks be used to actually stay ahead of the game?
Yeah, well, I always encourage businesses to let people in on the creative process. Just show me what you're doing in a day and I'll understand you, and we'll find the common ground that we have as human beings. And, I might understand and actually want to work with you. So I think businesses should do it for that reason. Let the world in on what you're doing, your processes and your systems. Don't hide anything. And I think that should be a positive thing. If you're in business for the right reasons, if you are a good business, why wouldn't you let somebody in and be part of that? Just to pick up on your comment about scale, I know a very small Scottish business that employ 8 people, and they put a video on YouTube, and they wanted it to go viral, and it did, and it got more than 1 million views. They had to take the video back down while they recruited 2 new members of staff to handle the increased volume of inquiries. So social media is a wonderful opportunity. It can help us scale things very quickly, especially if we're using cloud facilities as well. It's great. It's all built for scale. But it can turn around and bite you a little bit as well, and you then need to react very quickly. Otherwise, you miss the opportunity.
Great problem to have.
Yeah. We need to make sure that Juice's next video is 1 million plus.
Yes. I've one at the ready.
Colin Kelly, we know a lot of the social networks that are out there at the moment, and those sorts of tools. Twitter, we've spoken about quite a bit. Do you think there's going to be any big change in the next sort of 18, 24 months, maybe beyond, about how we share online, how we collaborate online?
I hope so, because I'm not sure that Facebook and Twitter do what we need them to do. I think there's a lot of noise on Twitter. There's a lot of issue around Twitter's own business model and what they need to do to make themselves sustainable. I think we'll see more niche social networks emerging, maybe based around shared interest. I think if you look at the type of people that are on social media, a huge number of them, I think, want to make the world a better place. They want transparency. They want to be social. They want to help each other. There isn't really a social network that allows me to do that. They all have other types of people on it as well. So there maybe why can't the diff have its own social network for those kind of ideas? So we might start to see that, and I think there's going to be a lot more disruption in that space. You have things like Snapchat, you have WhatsApp that still really have to monetize themselves, and small businesses can't really do that much on Snapchat yet. Then you've got the entire economy of China. You've got, up till now, I think 50% of the world is connected to the internet, and over the next 20 years, the remaining 50% will connect. That's going to cause a huge amount of disruption as well. And so but overall, I think I'm very optimistic about what lies ahead.
Okay, so I feel like we've covered social media pretty well. What other tools are out there? Colin Kelly, you've already mentioned the blog can be a good tool, but what else is out there?
Well, I mean, there's things like cloud accountancy. There's various apps for collaboration internally. I mean, I suppose is there a particular sector that you're interested in, or a particular type of tool that you want, and guaranteed there's something there that somebody's created.
Colin McLaughlin, any experience from your new business or previous?
Yeah, I think one of the most important tools, and I'm not sure if everybody will agree with me here, that I use and have used time and time again, is a good CRM. And I want to know, as Colin says, there's lots of different social media platforms, how do you know what activity, who's opening my emails, who's looking at my Facebook page, who's following me on Twitter? I want to know all that information, because if somebody's opening 3 or 4 emails and looking me up in LinkedIn, etc., I want to talk more to them. So I think there's some really good CRM tools out there, and one that can bring all your different social media platforms, all your customer, your database, all their activity into one place meaningfully, so that you know who's hot and which prospects really want to use your product or service. That to me it was a difficult decision on which one should I use, and I'm not going to plug one over another. In fact, I've got 2 businesses, and I use 2 different ones for 2 good reasons, I should add.
You can give me that advice offline afterwards.
Yeah. One's about managing contacts, and the other one's about managing sales opportunity. And I think 2 different platforms is good for that. So depending what your business model is, I think the first thing you should invest in, get a really good CRM system.
And what about other people's writing or other influencers' thoughts on this? There's so much good stuff to read out there about startups and about the process of building a startup and reaching new people and new audiences. Colin Kelly, you mentioned about Seth Godin earlier, who is a writer whose work I really enjoy. Are there any others that you'd recommend to our viewers that they check out?
Well, I think it's always useful to actually step outside your sector. So I think if you're really interested in marketing, go and read somebody that does something completely different, get some different ideas. And I think that's why the diff for me and all the content I've consumed has been really interesting, because you've got people from thinkers, researchers, business owners from all different sectors. There's another guy called Bob Lefsetz, who was a music industry lawyer. He writes a blog about the music industry. And there's so much in that almost any business could apply to what they're doing. I mean, there's so many. I think go in and look around and I think you need to be willing to be challenged. It's very easy nowadays. We get this tailored news feed. We get a version of the world that's just right for me. Well, you need to sometimes deliberately step outside that and spend time reading people or meeting people whose way of thinking doesn't fit your own, so that you get some new ideas.
And Colin McLaughlin, any thoughts on advice?
No, I would actually take Colin's. Try as many different things as you possibly can. Marketing is not a science. It's about bringing the horse to water. You're still going to make it drink, but how do you get it there? There's not just one methodology, and what you do today you'll be doing differently in a month's time. So try and find what works for you, but always stay ahead of the game by looking what's the next turn, what's the next thing that's going to bring me 100 people in to speak to, or however many it is you want to speak to. So there's some great, I'm just saying, there's great tools out there. I love, nothing more than looking at new apps or new technology that is out there, new bits of software I can download, and I'll try them. And if they work for me, guess what? I'll use them again until they stop working for me, and then I'll find something else. But you've just got to keep trying things. I've even recently, believe it or not, started handwriting letters and sending them to people. I thought I would go completely back the opposite way and thought, can I catch the eye of the CEO by handwriting a letter? And I have to say I've been quite impressed by the results.
Well, so it might not be all about new technology and the latest social networks. It might be just picking up a pen and paper.
Well, actually, I went the old-fashioned way and just got a feather that fell out of a seagull and dipped it in a bit.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for sharing your insights on startup tools and the business models on which you can apply them today. To those of you watching online, I hope that as you absorb all the different ideas and innovations that you see during the schedule at the Disruptive Innovation Festival, that some of this advice can be applied into developing either your own startup idea or from scratch, or maybe applying them to your business, whatever shape or size currently. I really enjoyed that statement really early on. I think it was maybe in our opening statements that there's more opportunity than there's ever been. And people are finding ways to get into the circular economy and using all manner of different tools to develop new relationships with customers and with maybe even with the competition as well. So thank you to both Colin Kelly and Colin McLaughlin for joining me today at the Disruptive Innovation Festival. Stick around, check out the full schedule at thinkdiff.co/schedule. We've got headliners all week. We've got the Diff Grand Finale that's being live streamed for 3 or 4 hours on Wednesday. So that's definitely one not to miss this week at the Diff. But for now, thanks for joining us at the Disruptive Innovation Festival 2015, and we'll see you soon.